Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Bin Chickens Record Fair podcast. Once again, my name is Chris, and tonight I'm going to be speaking with somebody who works for a wonderful independent music label that's based right here in Chicago called Bloodshot Records. Mike, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for doing it. Why don't you start off by just kind of talking about Bloodshot Records a little bit, or a lot of it, as much as you want. Hello? Can you hear me?
Hey, I can hear you. Sorry, I lost you for just a second.
Oh, okay. Did you hear my question or no?
Yeah, you asked me to talk about Bloodshot.
Yeah, okay. No, I just wanted to make sure everything got through.
Yeah, sorry, you're gonna have to edit this part now.
No, you know what the beauty of this is that I'm not editing anything. We're just gonna keep that in there. I think it's funny.
Oh, great. So my technical follies will be documented. Excellent.
Yeah, so I'm just putting you on full warning at this point. I hope you're cool with
Okay.
it.
No, good to know. Good to know. I'll try to self-edit while we're talking. Let's see. Bloodshot Records is an independent record label based in Chicago. It's been in business for 25 years this month. So we have some celebrating to do this year, and we'll have some things coming up later this year to commemorate. It was started in 1994. Essentially, the reason that it was founded, not by me, I wasn't there just yet, was to document and record this kind of interesting pocket of music in Chicago that was happening, which was kind of a fusion between rock and roll and traditional country music. And that includes, bluegrass and folk and hillbilly, western swing. There was a lot of that happening at the time, and there still is in Chicago. So they decided to document some of that, and then with a compilation that came out in '94. And then over the years, it just turned into a full-fledged label, and now we have, I'd say, roughly 25 full-time touring artists, and then some legacy acts and odds and ends here and there. But these days, there's only a small handful of Chicago artists. We now have artists from most of them are from the United States, but some from other places: UK, Australia, Canada. So that's kind of the gist of the history behind the label. We are still very active in Chicago music, as much as we can be. It's certainly a community that has allowed us to grow and thrive, but also still be a small independent label and keep things honest with a kind of a punk rock DIY spirit.
Cool. What is your what do you specifically do within Bloodshot, and how long have you been with them?
I've been at the label for 6 years. It was 6 years in March, which is kind of an independent record label eternity. in such a volatile, unpredictable industry, I have friends who've had 3 jobs in that time, so I'm very fortunate to have been there for the time that I have been. And I run marketing at the label, so all of our online content and communications, digital advertising, digital music and video strategy, merchandising, art direction, some festival things here and there, tour marketing, all kinds of things. We wear lots of hats at the label.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Are you the one who wrote the I did check out your website a little bit earlier today. I kind of clicked around, scrolled around some things. I read the About Us, like the description of the label. Did you write that? Or was
I
that
did not
else?
write that. I must give the credit to our fearless captain, Rob Miller, who he's at the helm of the ship, and he founded the label. He wrote that. It goes through some edits here and there, but the gist of it was written years ago, kind of as our mission statement.
Yeah, no, I did enjoy reading that. It was definitely well written and engaging. Um, a On a personal note, I think it was towards the end of the description. Um, he was talking about the location of where your guys is. You just have like an office or like a whole building, or
We have an office. It's kind of a strange little space that used to be a bakery. So there's a storefront, and then there's kind of this coach house, and there are apartments upstairs. But we have the whole first floor, and then there is a warehouse in the back with a basement because we do a fair amount of mail order and we do all of our own distribution. So that all kind of happens back there, and then the storefront. For years, it was just a place for us to meet and drink and gamble, and then we decided that maybe we should do something with this. It's a cool little space. So about 2 years ago, we turned it into a little record store, and it's not technically open to the public all the time, but if we have fans who are coming through town and they want to check some stuff out and pick up some records, it's a good place to show them around. We have some regulars who come by, but a few times a year we open it up to the public, and for Record Store Day, for the holidays, we'll do some in-store performances sometimes, and
yeah,
we open
yeah.
it up to all of our fans and friends.
Excellent. Um, so where is it at exactly? Because it said on Irving Park in the northwest side of the city. So
Yeah,
it's
it's
in what?
it's but on Irving between Sacramento and Kedzie. So the
Okay.
Irving Park, Albany Park, Avondale kind of nexus right there.
Sure, sure. And I thought it was funny because it mentioned a Serbian butcher shop, and it also mentioned an Ecuadorian restaurant that is always nearly empty. I myself am half Ecuadorian, so I read that and I was like, at first I was like, oh great, Ecuador, Ecuador, Viva Ecuador, and then I was like, wait, why is it always empty? Well, how come nobody's representing for Ecuador out there? But then I realized I also
There's
never
some
gone there, so
yeah, there's some wonderful ethnic food in that area. I mean, there's some really great stuff. But that restaurant in particular, I've been there one time and I did not particularly enjoy it, though I do enjoy Ecuadorian food. So
okay.
yeah, I don't know but there's a great Peruvian chicken place over there. There's wonderful Cuban food. What I say is my favorite taqueria in the city, Tomatillo Tacoville, is right down the street. It's actually a really
I think I've been there.
yeah, that place is great. $2 tacos, everything's well marinated. I'm probably there once a week.
Oh wow, yeah. You definitely like it.
I do.
Now you say you turned the storefront into kind of a record shop. Is it
Mhm.
is it all Bloodshot Records label records? Like is it all stuff that you guys like all your artists, or is there other stuff too? Or
I would say it's 90 to 95% our stuff, and then there are a few things that are either records by artists we used to work with who we're still buddies with and they're on other labels now, or side projects of our bands, kind of peripherally related things.
okay,
We have those in there just to have some other things for people to browse, and then also to throw our friends a bone and stock their records and maybe sell a few copies.
sure, sure. I think when I was on your website, I think there was some sort of release. I assumed it was like current release or recent release that was being advertised, and it was like the number was like high 200s. So I'm assuming you guys have released somewhere in the neighborhood of like 280 record releases since your inception.
Yeah, probably over 300 now because we've had some reissues of some kind of legacy stuff, and then we've had some sort of co-releases with some other labels and other odds and ends that have been had different catalog numbers. So yeah, somewhere around 300 records. So probably 3,000, 3,500 songs.
Wow. And have you listened to them all?
I probably have heard every song at some point in my tenure there. I certainly, I was very familiar with the label when I started, so I'd already heard maybe 20, 25 records. And then since I've been there, I've probably heard every song. There might be a handful that haven't crossed my ears yet.
Cool, cool. Um, where do you? So you guys don't. I assume you don't press your own records. Like you outsource that somewhere.
Yeah, you have to. I don't know if there's anywhere that presses their own LPs. There's only a few pressing plants.
Hmm.
The technology is pretty complicated. Some of it's really antiquated, but they are starting to, or there are a couple companies that are starting to manufacture machines again now that it seems like vinyl's here to stay. There's actually I was there today, paying them a visit. There is a new pressing plant in Chicago. It's the first functional pressing plant that's been here since the 1970s. It's called Smash Plastic. It's on the west side, like the Hermosa neighborhood, over on
Okay.
Diversity in the old Hammond organ factory.
Yeah.
And they have a new pressing plant, and it's beautiful. It's awesome, and it's rather technologically sound, since it's a new machine, and they're doing some really neat stuff there. But other than that, I'm just taking a wild guess. There can't be more than 10 or 15 plants in the U.S.
Yeah, yeah. Julie was telling me about this new plant, and I think she mentioned also that there's like hardly any pressing plants in the country, which
I mean, the machines are huge. They require really sophisticated ventilation systems.
okay.
It's a complicated process.
But have you seen records being pressed like when you went there?
Yeah, yeah. There's usually something always in production when I've stopped by there. So we're going to be working on a few projects with them later this year, but the bulk of our records are pressed with a company called Gotta Groove that's based in Ohio.
Okay, okay. Um, are you guys are going to be at our event, obviously. There's going to be also somebody or maybe multiple people, I don't know, DJing at our event as well.
Yes,
Are you the DJ?
I am the DJ. We have
Oh,
several folks who DJ, but I will be the one that's there spinning records.
excellent, excellent. So are you going to be spinning like, and again, I'm not knocking this, I'm just curious. Are you going to be spinning all Bloodshot stuff, like kind of like a showcase of the label, or
I
just
I will be spinning mostly Bloodshot stuff, but I'm also going to be throwing in some, records that are, uh, tangentially related, whether it's,
sure?
genre or, related artists. I'm going to try to curate some things to keep it a little bit more diverse.
Cool, cool. How long have you been DJing? How did you get into that?
I've been DJing since 2009, so 10 years. When I was I went to college in Virginia, and in a town that was, had a great music scene, a lot of different types of music. And a buddy of mine who I'm still close friends with, I think we were just out one night at a bar hanging out, and we were talking music, and he said, "Have you ever thought about DJing? I've always wanted to get into it." And my buddy who goes to, I think his buddy was going to University of Virginia just down the road. He said he's gotten into it, and he's DJing parties, he's DJing clubs, and he said he'll show us how to do it. So uh, we went for it and learned how to DJ digitally. We were doing a lot of beat matching and sampling and playing a lot of house and hip hop and some indie rock and then some off the wall, movie music, and just kind of mixing it all together. And we ended up gathering quite a following in our town and in our region. So I did that for a couple years there, and then I moved to Chicago after I graduated and kept doing the club thing. I was still doing a lot of house and electronic music and some hip hop. And I was playing at Beauty Bar. I was playing at Empty Bottle. I was doing some stuff, and some of the clubs in Old Town and River North. And then when I started working at Bloodshot a few years later, I didn't have as much time to keep up on that, just because you really have to keep up on a lot of the new music and pop music, and I just didn't have as much time, and I was kind of detached from that world. So I still occasionally will do some, maybe, I've done some Pride events the last couple summers where I'm doing more
Oh,
house and current stuff. And then occasional, old school hip hop gigs, maybe downtown. But for the most part, I've kind of fallen into the Bloodshot world, and now I'm a resident DJ at Delilah's, where I'm playing honky tonk and punk rock and surf music, and I've kind of taken that, and that's my main DJ gig now is
Okay.
doing more of the rock and roll and honky tonk kind of stuff, which is really fun for me because it spans so many decades, and you can go on so many tangents with it, and it keeps my record collection up to snuff.
Yeah.
So that's been kind of the main thing recently. So that's what I'll be spinning a lot of at the vinyl fair.
Cool. Cool. Are you cool with because you said you only ever used like digital, like just
Oh
spin
no,
digital?
I probably for the most part spin digital, but I also spin vinyl, and that's what I'll be doing at the fair.
Okay, cool. I just wanted to make sure. I was like, oh shit, like because you have the first slot, and I'm like, wait, we may need to change the setup if.
No, I'll be
Okay.
bringing a big Crater Records and spinning from that.
Perfect. Perfect. All right. I'm excited to hear that. Because I'm definitely unfamiliar with a lot, if not all, of the genres that Bloodshot listed in their, self description. I'm
You may be
definitely.
more familiar than you think. That's usually what I find when people
Oh, really?
say, "Oh man, I don't really know that kind of, you know, that little corner of things." And then I'm like, "Well, what about this person and this person? And what about this song?" They're like, "Oh man, I've heard that before." Okay, so you may be surprised.
I may be surprised. You're right. You're right on that. Um, so so I'm definitely main focused is on electronic music, almost all genres of electronic music. Um, and then hip hop's probably my strong number two there.
Excellent.
So yeah, yeah. So do you have favorite electronic genres or artists or favorite hip hop artists or favorite?
Favorite hip hop artists I can easily answer. I'm definitely a big fan of kind of the what you call the golden age of hip hop. So,
Yeah.
a lot of the Native Tongue stuff, um, Beastie Boys, a lot of the New York stuff from that era. Also, a lot of the Bay Area stuff from that era too. But I listen to a lot of modern hip hop too. I'm pretty fixated on the most recent two Anderson .Paak records.
Okay.
Those just mix together so many different genres that I enjoy. Trying to think what else recently I've been into in the hip hop world. Um, I think some of the stuff that's kind of loosely related to what he's doing and some of the Save Money stuff, I really enjoy. So basically, that Black Panther soundtrack was right in my wheelhouse. The newest Janelle Monáe record. Trying to think what else. There's definitely some more obscure stuff. There's this guy Henry Canyons who's from Brooklyn, who I really enjoy. He's got this kind of like jazzy, smooth style that kind of reminds me of maybe like Tribe Called Quest
Sure.
kind of stuff. I love that last Rick Wilson EP, who's a Chicago guy.
Okay.
That was fantastic. Kwaku Collins is great as far as local stuff. Um,
I think you mentioned Native Tongues. I think De La Soul. I think I just saw this today. I think De La Soul is going to be at Grant Park sometime in July.
yeah, they're doing that Taste of Chicago. I'll have to
Oh,
decide
it's
if I'm going to get through the crowds to go see them.
yeah, yeah.
I remember a couple years ago the Roots were playing, and I was like, I don't know if I'm going to make it down. It's such a mess down there.
It-
Another Chicago hip hop record I love is that the Joey Perp record from last year. It is really fantastic too. Um, the Jamila Woods record is another great Chicago hip hop album. I love the way she samples things, and she has a new record coming out this year. So that's kind of my hip hop forte.
okay.
Um, as far as electronic and house music, I've definitely fallen out of it a little bit more than I would like. But some of the early stuff that I was introduced to through friends, was stuff like Chemical Brothers and Crystal Method and Fatboy Slim.
Yeah, all the big beats.
Yeah, and then after that, kind of got into maybe more of like Felix the House Cat and Frankie Knuckles, kind of that world. Maybe some more British stuff too.
Yeah.
Trying to think of some more recent, and then I kind of got into more of the like Bloghouse sort of stuff, like Justice and Cut Copy
Okay.
And that kind of world. And then in turn, a lot more of the hip hop that was influenced by house, kind of where all that stuff sort of came together.
Yeah.
I love that John Hopkins record from last year. That's probably my favorite recent more house dance record. His stuff is so intricate and amazing. So yeah, I mean, I'm not as well versed in the modern stuff, and some of the more heavy, dubstep, Euro house kind of stuff.
Yeah,
kind of gets out of my comfort zone.
I absolutely hate dubstep. I absolutely despise it, and I've hated it from the first song that I heard, and I was just like, "What? This is garbage."
I mean,
And
I
then
kind of like where it started. I like some of the more minimal stuff. You're like dub, like Fortet. Some of that stuff I really like. Some of the more minimal sort of dub, and then once it got into the, kind of mimicking heavy rock music or metal, I was thinking, man, this is like the same thing as as metalcore music or that sort of stuff, but just electronic.
yeah,
Which I'm already kind of out of that phase, so it wasn't
yeah,
wasn't really for me. I mean, I totally get the experience of it, and I understand why people love the dynamics of it, but I wasn't into a whole lot of it. I like the heavy sort of stuff that maybe somebody like Justice has done, but beyond that, it's not really my thing.
um, you mentioned Chemical Brothers, and they're one of my top three artists of all time. I listen to them literally every day. I listen to at least one.
That's not a bad thing.
No, it's not. I don't know if you've had a chance to listen to their latest album. It came out in April, called No Geography.
Oh, really? Man, I'm trying to think. I think I heard something recent from them, and maybe that was it.
Yeah, they had a couple singles like Free Yourself, was their first one, and it's 10 tracks, and it's great. I can't give it a really higher of a recommendation. It's if you get a chance, definitely just check it out, like cover to cover.
I actually love. It's from a few years ago, from 2015, I think, but the Chemical Brothers and Beck song "Wide Open." That song
Oh,
is phenomenal.
it is so. You know what? You're right. That song is phenomenal. And when that album came out, because that was 2015, it came out like 2 weeks, I think, after my ex-fiance like abruptly dumped me. Um,
Oh man,
and so like
sorry to hear
you know,
that.
yeah, well, it's I'm over it now. At least that's what I tell myself. But I appreciate that. But so I was listening to that album then, and it's just a couple weeks removed from that event, and I'm on the bus, like on a Saturday heading downtown for some reason, and I hadn't heard I got to the end of it, and I heard that Wide Open song, and I was honestly, I was just crying on the bus because like the
Yeah.
lyrics are, it's sentimental shit,
Oh,
but
absolutely,
it's a
absolutely.
phenomenal song for sure.
It is. The reason I found that song, oddly enough, is because Jamie, my wife, works in film, and
So
she
she's the
works.
fiance who didn't dump you.
Yeah, that one's going okay thus far. So she works in visual effects in film, and the company that she used to work for before her current job, they did all the visual effects for that music video, and that music video is incredible. Amazing choreographed dance, and then this really unique and intricate concept where this dancer kind of turns into this like 3D printed exoskeleton.
Huh.
And that's how I found the song. And she was showing me this video. She's like, "Oh, this video is amazing." And it's Beck, because we both really like Beck. And I said, "This song is incredible." And I haven't listened to anything new from Chemical Brothers in years. So that kind
Yeah,
of took me back down the rabbit hole with them.
that's awesome. Yeah, that's definitely one of the standout tracks on that album. There's also a remix of it by, I'm probably gonna mispronounce it. It's Kolsch, like kind of like the beer, like a Kolsch
Okay.
beer. Or whatever. That remix is like it's like a little more like trancier. But if you should check that one out too because it retains enough of the flavor of the original to, you know,
Yeah, I'm writing that down right now.
yeah. So let's see. Where do you so do you buy do are you buying vinyl now? Like do you collect records? Like
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
do you have like
I
favorite places to go or
um in Chicago, I love Laurie's Planet of Sound in Lincoln Square. That's just a very welcoming community there, and they always have a great selection of new and used LPs. I always pick up several things when I'm in there, and I'm an album guy, so I typically purchase LPs, and when I DJ and spend vinyl, it's mostly 12-inch LPs with the occasional single thrown in here and there.
okay.
Um, I'm the kind of person that I come home and I put on an LP while I'm hanging out and making dinner or watching basketball or cleaning
Yeah.
up whatever I need to do. So singles, just haven't ever really been a big thing for me, unless it's something that I really love or a cool release or just something that falls into my hands. But yeah, I love Laurie's. Dave's Records in Lakeview is great. They always have some obscure stuff. They also get some of the weird hip hop bootlegs in there. Sometimes I like to pick up.
Yeah, yeah, they do.
I live in the kind of Noble Square, West Town, Wicker Park area, so I find myself in Reckless every so often.
Yeah.
It's just such a huge store that they're always going to have some stuff coming in and out that interests me, and
Yeah.
I've actually found some pretty great deals on old honky tonk records there. I always like to peruse kind of the value section for those kinds of things there. Dusty Groove is over here, which is a great spot for soul and R&B. I'm trying to think of other places that I frequent.
Talking about the Reckless on Milwaukee, right?
Yeah, yep.
Do you ever make it down to Sugar Records? Because that's over there too.
I've only been in there a couple times. I think just because I'm so kind of automated to go into uh, Dusty Groove and into Reckless. I've only been to Sugar a couple times. I did buy something there, and I'm trying to remember what it was I picked up. But it's an awesome shop
Yeah.
and well curated, and I've heard really good things about the people who run the shop too.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. They're cool, and that shop is definitely a good shop, and they've got a lot of like great soundtracks in there. I found a lot of cool soundtracks. And they recently just expanded. I think into like I think they knocked out a wall and have like an extra like space for like 12-inch dance and hip hop singles.
oh, I
So
didn't. Oh, that's awesome. I didn't realize
yeah,
that. I really like Record Breakers in Avondale too. That's another
yeah,
great shop.
I haven't made it out there yet.
Yeah, it's at like Milwaukee and Kimball, I'd say. Probably right about
Okay.
there. Um, yeah, it kind of reminds me of it's set up very similarly how Logan Hardware was set up, and they have a great selection, really helpful staff. I always find some kind of goofball odds and ends in there.
Yeah.
I buy a lot of records online too. I frequent Bandcamp, and I love the fact that I can buy an LP on there and have the download right away. And as a DJ, that's really helpful.
Yeah.
And I'll find some things on eBay and Discogs every so often. I try not to make too much of a habit of doing that because it's so time consuming, and I'd rather go dig in a store.
Yeah. Because I make it out to stores pretty often myself. I live in Lincoln Park, so I'm right down the street. Actually, I live on Wrightwood, so
Okay.
I'm and like by the lake, so I'm right down the street from Dave's.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, Dave's is great, and Dave's a great guy as well. So I like
yeah.
going in there.
So I go there a lot. Gramophone. Then I love going
Yeah.
to Gramophone for all the dance stuff.
Have you been to the new Reckless over there
I have. I've been there. I
on
think
Belmont,
twice
right?
now. Yeah, it's on Belmont. It's right by the train station over there.
Hmm.
So I think there's space. I think it's a bigger space than the one they had on Broadway.
Yeah, it is, which means it's very big.
Yeah, yeah. So I've been in there twice, picked up a couple things.
Great.
Yeah, Reckless is great. So Gramophone, and then is there any other ones nearby me that I go to? I think that's pretty. So I usually go to Gramophone and Dave's the majority of the time, and then if I make it out to other neighborhoods, oh, you know what? Have you been to that store, The Exchange?
I've been there a few times, but I haven't really perused the records. I think I've bought some movies in there before.
Yeah, because they have, yeah, because so you obviously know they've got movies, they've got
Hmm.
CDs, records, they've got video games. Um, they even have some comic books too. It's like everything I've ever loved all in one space.
Yeah.
If they had beer there, then I would just, ask if I could work there for free and
Yeah,
just
the nerd heaven.
yeah. But I've actually found some good things at the Exchange too, and that's what I like about going to different record stores because literally every single record store has obviously their own individual buyer or buyers, and so that buyer or buyers have their own tastes, they have their own, preferences,
Absolutely.
what they want to stock. So like you can just go to every record store and have a different experience every time, and I love that. And so digging at every record store is crucial to me because you never know where you're going to find something, and that's why you just got to dig for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And there aren't, unless I'm preparing for a DJ set, like for instance, I spun a Johnny Cash birthday set at Big Star a couple months ago, and I was preparing for that, and I have some Cash, and I have some records that have covers of Cash and some other things, but I wanted a little bit more because I was spinning for a few hours. So, I popped into a couple stores to see what I could find. But unless unless I'm doing that or I'm looking for a particular new release, I usually just stop by record stores if I'm in the area. If I'm in Avondale and I'm right by Record Breakers, I'll lock up my bike and pop in there and see what they have. And it's I very rarely set times where I'm like, all right, I'm gonna go by the store, go see what's new. It's usually just kind of a convenience thing.
Sure, sure. You also mentioned Fatboy Slim earlier. I've got some records here on the floor of my apartment because I've just recently reconfigured my apartment, and I use those cubes that they sell at IKEA, like I think they're called the
Yeah,
collapse cubes.
yeah, I do too.
Yeah. Yeah. So I just got so I've got a 5x5 that's full, and then I've got a 4x4 that's nearly full. But I've still got some stacks of records that are on the ground right now because I've been pulling stuff for possible because I'm going to be DJing at the event too, so I'm pulling
Great.
stuff for checking it out. But I bought this record through Discogs, and I buy a lot of shit through Discogs. I buy stuff that I've never. I mean, I've been looking for records for 20 years now. I started in like '99 is when I bought
Mm.
my first record. So in those 20 years, there are certain songs and records that I've never seen once out in the wild. So I like Discogs because now I can have these finally that I've been looking for years. But this
Yeah,
record that I
I've done the same.
yeah. So the record that I just picked, it got delivered last week from the UK, was the Fatboy Slim remix of that song "Brimful of Asha" by Corner
Yeah,
Shop.
yeah. I've heard that remix before.
Yeah, and it's a banging remix, and I was like, I was going through Discogs like 2 weeks ago, and I was like, I haven't bought anything in a while, and by that I mean it was like 4 days since I'd last purchased one.
Yeah, I think
So,
my introduction to Fatboy Slim, I do remember I had a friend growing up who was really into Fatboy Slim, like when we were in middle school, and that's kind
yeah,
of how I got into it fully. But the first time I had ever heard Fatboy Slim was his remix of "Body Movin'" by Beastie Boys,
yeah,
and
yeah,
with the video where they're chopping each other's heads off,
yeah,
which I recently saw in a dance club. The DJ was playing videos, and once that came on, I just thought it was hilarious that video was being played in the dance club while people
yeah,
were,
yeah.
were getting their groove on. But that's one that actually I found is pretty difficult to find because it's only on the Body Movin' single, the 12-inch single.
Right, right.
It's also on the Sounds of Science Beastie Boys anthology, but that's only on CD and digital. So I have yet to track that one down.
Yeah, yeah. You got to get your hands on that, man.
I know I need to look a little harder. I have Beastie Boys are one band that if I see singles of theirs, I just pick them up.
Yeah, yeah. Um, And which was the one? I don't mean to bring up a somber subject. Which is the one who passed recently?
That was MCA.
Okay.
Yeah,
Um, So one of the other two that are surviving, I saw give an interview a couple I saw it probably a couple months ago, but the interview was maybe from within the last 2 or 3 years. Um, he was on, I think, and I'm pretty sure it was Sway's radio show, but he was talking about like Sway was asking him like, how do you feel about this current generation of hip hop kids, of rappers who, you know, don't know anything about the Beastie Boys or don't know the history of hip hop, like,
Mhm.
you drop, the name Tupac or Biggie and they're like, we don't listen to that shit, like we don't need to listen to that shit, like they're just all
Right.
about themselves. How do you feel about that? Because a lot of older hip hop heads, take great offense, and you were referencing the golden age of hip hop. Um, and a lot of these kids are just like, whatever, I don't care. And I didn't anticipate, and I wish I knew which Beastie Boy it was. All I know is that it wasn't the dead one. Um, I I didn't anticipate his response, but I really liked it. And he was just like, you know what, man? He's like, they don't they don't have to know the history of this. They don't like. He's like, I don't take offense, because he's like, when we were coming up, when we were 19, 20 years old and getting into the game, he's like, we didn't give a shit about what records were hot 10 years before we started. Like,
Yeah.
we were trying to do our own thing. So he's like, I don't fault them at all for having that attitude. Like, more power to them. I want them to be successful. I want everybody in hip hop to be successful, and they don't need to pay homage to everybody who came before them to do that. And I was like,
I assume that sounds like something Mike D would say. He always has. I always feel like he's very modest in uh, his views on where hip hop has gone and other artists and um, I think, I mean, that's probably also true for many other genres. I'm sure that I'm hearing it now in the what you call Americana or roots music genre, which that's now where a lot of the more traditional country resides, because pop country has become this completely other genre. But a lot of that stuff now is sounding like 90s country. It sounds like some of the stuff that Dwight Yoakam was doing in the early 90s. It sounds like you know some of the stuff that Steve Earle or like early Reba McEntire, like what they were doing. And it, but in that way, those folks are in the end still being influenced by things further from the past, because the artists that they're influenced by were influenced by those artists.
right,
And I would think that with hip hop, that's the same way. I mean, I'm sure that some of the young rappers are just saying, yeah, I never really got into some of the late 80s New York stuff, but they certainly listened to music that was influenced by that. And you probably
yeah,
find those common threads either way.
yeah. No, that's a great point. Um, so I meant to check this out on the Bloodshot website earlier. I think it was on the same page as the about description. I think there was like a series of like questions at the bottom.
Yeah, we
Like
have a
frequently.
frequently asked questions,
Yeah,
trying to educate people who have inquiries.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I saw a couple of them that piqued my interest. One of them was about like, what do you guys feel about Spotify?
Hmm.
And I'm assuming just streaming in general. So what is the since you guys are an independent music label, yeah, how do you feel about that?
I mean, I think streaming is a necessary evil, and it's the product of the major labels and the RIAA not responding properly or intelligently to the onset of Napster and file sharing.
Okay.
Their reaction was, we're going to go after the fans, we're going to sue the fans,
Yeah.
the people who love our music and go to our artist shows and buy t-shirts and probably are still buying CDs while they're file sharing.
Yeah.
Um, and instead of trying to come up with a solution, they tried to fight it. So then file sharing and piracy was a bigger problem for years and years than it needed to be. And then everybody got used to having their music for free, and that they have a right to recorded music, which, I can understand that thought that, if you're a human being in a free society, that you should be able to consume art and enjoy art. And that's one of the beautiful things about the modern world. But at the same time, in order for this great music to keep reaching your ears and coming to your town, you got to support it. And I think that, yeah, charging $9.99 a month for all the music in the world is completely insane and is never going to pay artists adequately and songwriters adequately and independent labels adequately. So we need to figure out an ecosystem in which people are discovering all this music and enjoying all this music at their fingertips, but they're also going to shows and buying merch and buying records. Like that's this crazy thing now, is that people are streaming all this music and then they're buying their favorites on vinyl so that they can have the best of both worlds. And I think that's a reaction to all this digital music and how overwhelming it is and how impersonal it feels. And then having an LP and the big artwork and it's, this beautiful packaging, and you can put on a record at home and really enjoy it and have friends over and have them pick records. I mean, that's a totally different experience than being on an overwhelming app like Spotify or Apple Music or Amazon, what have you. But the other part we need to figure out is supporting independent music on these services, because what happens is, because of just the ecosystem of music, and it's no different than radio or MTV or wherever we got music in the past, is that a lot of the major labels and the popular artists, they're getting the majority of the opportunities and the visibility on these services. And there are a lot of great organizations, a couple that we're affiliated with, like the American Association of Independent Music, or A2IM. There's another organization called Merlin, where they are sort of these voices, these trade organizations for independent labels that are fighting for and negotiating with the DSPs, which are the digital service providers, your Spotify's, Apple's, Titles, whatever, to make sure that independent labels and independent artists are getting some of the same opportunities that major label artists are, or else it just turns into, all of the front page music discovery or everything that's being fed into your algorithms are all, artists that already get a lot of opportunities and maybe, aren't as much on the cutting edge of what's happening. So I know that streaming is a necessary evil. I know that it's here to stay, but I think it's really important to be vocal about how it's affecting, especially independent music. And that's not to say there aren't artists and songwriters on major labels that aren't struggling too. And just make sure that we're being transparent about what that means for the industry and what it means to be a responsible music listener.
Man, that is a well articulated argument. And
it's something I talk about a lot. It's a big part of my life.
Yeah, I don't think this is the first time you've given that spiel.
Certainly not, but the context, I like the way you put the question, which was just, how do you feel about it? Usually it's like, man, don't you hate Spotify? And it's like, that's coming from it from a totally different angle.
Sure. And so the reason why I'm coming from it from a totally different angle is because my last name is Angle, actually. That's not a joke.
You were born into it.
Yeah. Okay, so full disclosure, I use Spotify, and I've used Spotify for probably I don't know, 3 or 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
But like you said earlier about like when Napster and all that was the rage, and I'll never forget seeing I saw it like on a news report watching Lars Ulrich from Metallica. Like, I'm pretty sure he was like physically like wheeling like a dolly with like cardboard boxes of Napster users' names, like that had like downloaded Metallica songs for free. Like, he was like wheeling that into the courthouse. Like, he was just enraged by it. And I guess I can understand, or as much as somebody who's never been a music maker himself, I can understand why he would be angry. But I was just like, man, like you said, like they went after the wrong people to go after.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, can you blame 13-year-old kids for figuring out that they can download all their favorite punk rock and hip hop songs for free? And there's so many bands from that era that were discovered from the P2P services. You know,
Yeah.
one in particular that comes to mind is this band from Austin called the Gourds, who kind of a bluegrass folk, but kind of they have some soul in their music too. I remember they got really popular from that because they had this cover of Snoop and Dre's Gin and Juice that was amazing. It's like this bluegrass cover of that song that is still great. And they, for some reason, that made it through all the P2P services. And I'm sure it's just because people were searching for Gin and Juice and they wanted that song. And then the Gourds kind of blew up after that. And you know, that was a great thing that happened to them. And then they had people coming to shows and buying merch and whatnot. And you know, sure, you know, we are not making as much money from downloads as we used to, and we're selling fewer CDs, but we do still sell a lot of CDs, and bands sell CDs at shows, and I would say especially our bands who skew toward an older audience, they're still selling CDs, and then vinyl's kind of across the board, all ages, and you know, it's there's two very different worlds in especially independent music right now between digital and physical, but they are two worlds that are coexisting. And I think that blending those worlds and also figuring out what works and what doesn't work in those worlds is really important. And that's one reason that I really like Bandcamp a lot, because it's such a great discovery tool. That it is paid downloads, but you can stream it before you download it, and you can buy physical on there at the same time as digital, and it goes into your library, and you can download the files in high res if you want. I mean, it's just a really great service for music lovers.
I've had that recommended to me by a good friend of mine who's way into music, so I think I'm gonna have to check that out. You're now the second person who's been like raving about it, so I'm gonna have to check it out for sure.
One of the best things about it is that you can click the tags on each album, and it'll show you everything else that's tagged with that. So it's genres, themes, musicians, like all kinds of things. Like
yeah.
I went down a rabbit hole. I was actually preparing for a surf and exotica DJ set, and I was picking up some random things. I wanted a little bit more robust of a playlist, and I clicked surf, and I just kept, you know, clicking and clicking and clicking, and I ended up finding this label whose name escapes me at the moment, but there's this label in Russia that has all these Russian surf bands, and you know, they're all playing like Dick Dale style, you know, surf music, and a lot of them are from St. Petersburg, and I'm sure that there's I know that there's a rockabilly scene there, but I didn't know as much about the surf, so I started buying up all this stuff, and then because you buy it directly from the labels and directly from the artists on Bandcamp. So that's who's billing you for it. Okay. And suddenly my credit card wasn't working anymore. And I started getting all these text messages from Chase Bank because there were all these Russian characters, and I was buying things in such quick succession that they thought it was
fraudulent.
Yeah, exactly.
You're like, no. I'm just getting a lot of Russian surf music.
Yeah, right. That sounds totally normal.
Just so that you don't think that I'm a bad person, Mike. I just wanted to let you know that even though I've been doing Spotify for years, I have been buying records, like you said.
Oh, it sounds like it, of course.
even the people in the Napster era who were downloading stuff, a lot of them were still buying CDs. You know, they were still buying shit. So I've never stopped buying music for sure.
Yeah, and it's not just buying records. It's going to shows. It's interacting with the bands on social media, showing them some love, sharing their music with your friends. Like, there's just so much, because music is so much easier to record and produce, and so much easier to distribute now on the internet. I mean, last year there were more records, albums released that can be documented than any other year in recorded history. And of course there were, because I can sit in my apartment and make I can make an acoustic record. I can make a record on Ableton, and I can just put that up on Bandcamp. I can put it up on any other service that I want. So in order to cut through that noise, bands need help making these interactions with real people and having conversations and having their fans, share the music with their friends and family. And those are ways that you can really help, even if you don't have the money to buy a $20 LP. Just sharing the music with somebody that you're friends with who might like it, and then they go to the show. I mean, that's huge.
Yeah, yeah. When did you first get into music, like personally? Like, was it from a young age?
Yeah, really young age. I grew up in a really musical household as far as my parents being music fans. My as a very young kid in the late 80s, early 90s, I was hearing everything from punk rock to grunge to new wave um, to some electronic music, to more on my mom's side, country music and folk. And it was kind of across the board. And a lot of it was contemporary music at the time. My parents didn't listen to a lot of classic rock or classic music. There was some of it here and there, just things that they kind of held on to. But for the most part, it was contemporary. I was hearing some hip hop in the house too. My parents latched on to Run DMC and Tupac and some things that were kind of going on at the time. So from a kid, I was hearing it all the time, and so I think I naturally loved it, and I still love a lot of that stuff that I was hearing in the house. And then from there, that's how I made friends. When I was in school, I was wearing T-shirts of bands that probably only a couple other kids in the class were into, and then I think they were playing music, so then I started playing music and started playing in bands, and then quickly realized that while I thought that was fun, I don't think that's a career for me. So I started working more behind the scenes and helping my own bands and my friends' bands out with different things and putting on shows and then DJing and whatnot. And the rest was history.
Yeah, yeah. I read an article today about, and I just wanted to know if you had any thoughts, positive, negative, or no thoughts on Hootie and the Blowfish.
I don't think I have any overtly negative thoughts. I mean, it's very inoffensive pop rock. I heard some of it on the radio when I was young. I'm sure a few of my friends had the cassettes or the CDs. There's one friend in particular I can remember who did. I kind of love what Darius Rucker has done. I don't listen to his modern music, his contemporary stuff, but the way that he, because a lot of popular radio country kind of sounds like what pop rock sounded like 15 years ago, 20 years ago, or maybe a slightly dumbed down version here and there. But he took what he was doing in Hootie and the Blowfish and turned it into pop country, and now he's headlining all these huge country festivals, and all these fans love him, and I'm sure they've dived into Hootie and the Blowfish too. But for him to do that, I mean, going from rock to country is pretty brilliant, and also, being a black singer-songwriter and breaking into pop country and being an icon. I mean, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, yeah. I read this article, and it was kind of just like because it's actually been 25 years, much like Bloodshot Records.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a big year, 2019.
I think we were a little bit of a reaction to what was happening in popular rock at the time.
Yeah, so maybe Hootie and the Blowfish in a way inspired the label to be founded.
Maybe in some strange way.
Yeah, but it's been 25 years since Cracked Rear View came out, which was obviously they're massive, and I knew it was because I was 14, 15 at the time when the singles were blowing up the radio. So I remembered it being huge, but
totally.
When I was looking at the numbers today, it's the 19th best-selling album of all time. It's like
worldwide or in America?
I think it's America.
Wow, that's still
15 million
remarkable.
Copies of that record.
I mean, you would probably ask any music fan what are the top 20 records, and that would not be in there.
That would not have come out of my mouth.
No, that's not an artist that I would have considered, but it kind of makes sense because they really did appeal to a lot of different types of people, and I think that's how Darius Rucker brilliantly became a country star as well.
Yeah, and I didn't know that he had done that either until I read this article, because the article was kind of like starting off as like a retrospective on that album in particular, and how, Hootie and the Blowfish as a group kind of became, an easy target for
Hmm.
music purists to kind of shit on and whatever. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But yeah, then the article did go on to say about how Darius himself, like you said, totally kind of didn't reinvent himself, but definitely changed gears and went into this
Yeah.
different lane and is finding huge success with it. So that's definitely respectable and cool.
Hey, good for him. He seems like a cool dude.
Yeah, yeah. Are there any records that are there any other records like on your Holy Grail record list that you just would fight tooth and nail to find? You've got the Fatboy Slim remix of Body Movement on there. Are there other ones that you were just like, I need to have this before I die?
I mean, I'm sure there's stuff that hasn't been pressed on LP that I would really like to own.
Like,
I will tell you that I occasionally go on Discogs and look for Wyclef Jean's The Carnival. It's always a UK import, and it's always more than I want to spend.
yeah,
But
yeah,
I would love to have that. I'm sure it's a double LP because that record's like 23 songs with all kinds of
it is.
skits and stuff.
Yeah,
But that was a really huge record for me. I was definitely a Fugees fan, but when that Wyclef Jean, that first one came out, I mean, he just blew my mind the way that he was mixing rock and roll and reggae and hip hop and all these different genres together pretty seamlessly. I mean, I think that's far and away his best record. And all the
yeah,
Fugees are still on it. It's essentially still a Fugees record.
yeah,
It's just very heavily, Wyclef.
yeah.
That's definitely one that I check on every so often. I did just pick up last week. There's this record label called Omnivore. It's a really cool label. Really great people work there. I've met them on a number of occasions. Um, they're mostly in the reissue game as far as classic country and some classic folk and rock. Um, but they came across or came into possession of Buck Owens' collection, his vault of his own records that somehow like were never shipped or didn't sell for some reason, or the record label shelved them. I have no idea. But there's all these sealed records. I'm sure they still have a few on their site, but they were going pretty quick. But I signed on the day they put them on their site, kind of the Buck Owens Estate record collection, and I picked up Buck Owens and the Buckaroos live at Carnegie Hall, which was recorded in the early 70s. And it is, in my opinion, one of the greatest country music live records of all time. It's got all the hits. It's got great banter. They do a bunch of great covers. And it was one of the first country acts to ever play at Carnegie Hall. And they didn't think it was ever going to sell. I mean, Buck Owens himself thought that this was a bad idea, that this wasn't going to amount to anything, having country music in New York City, and it ended up selling out, and he played there a bunch more times. But it's this like raucous and raw, just crazy country record with tons of great, country shredding and picking and singing. So that was one that I was looking for in decent shape, and then I got it sealed from Buck Owens Estate. And
Yeah.
they were selling them for like $15 because I guess they had a ton of them. So that was a great find that I recently picked up. I'm trying to think of any others that I've been really wanting to pick up. I'm sure there's stuff from when I was a kid. I know there's a bunch of. I had a. Well, I'm probably still in it. I had a pretty long love affair with Britpop, and
Oh,
I actually kind of quarterly or maybe a couple times a year I do a Britpop DJ set at the Burlington in Logan Square. There's definitely some Britpop records that I've been trying to get my hands on. That it's either a really expensive reissue or it's been out of print for a long time. I'm sure there's some Blur and some Creation Records stuff, some Manchester stuff that I've been looking for.
oh, so
Um,
you're not talking about Take That?
no, I'm not talking about the boy bands. I'm talking about the Britpop rock and roll movement from the probably the late '80s to the early 2000s.
Sure.
Yeah, more in that vein. The stuff that grew out of new wave and probably out of new wave, British invasion, punk, and house music. Like all of that was kind of happening
Yeah.
and kind of gave birth to that scene. But yeah, I don't know. I don't really have like a running list of stuff that I
Yeah.
am dying to get. It's just when I see it, I know it.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, on that Wyclef Jean Carnival record, do you have a favorite track on there?
The first thing that comes to mind is Jaspora. I love that song.
Okay.
Just his guitar work on that is rather incendiary, and it's this reggae rap song with crazy guitar solos where he's also rapping in Creole French. I mean, I mean, when I heard that, it blew my mind. I
Yeah.
love that record. Street Jeopardy, I think, is one of the greatest gangster rap songs, even though he was never really labeled as gangster rap.
Yeah.
Um, to All the Girls is on that record. That's a great song. His cover of, or it's kind of a cover, kind of a sample of Guantanamera is
Yeah.
amazing. All of Lauryn Hill's guest spots on that record. That's some of her best work and some of her last recorded work.
Yeah.
Yeah, that record will stick with me forever.
What about Anything Can Happen? Do you like that song?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I like any song on that record.
Yeah.
You could put it on, and I could tell you what the reason for my affinity is. Even Gone Till November, the big single. It's such a great
Yeah.
folk song.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, anything can happen. That's another great kind of street rap song.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, and because I have I've got the We Trying to Stay Alive song
Oh
on
yeah,
on vinyl, and it's one of the Anything Can Happen was just like thrown on there as like a B-side of the single. So
yeah, for sure. I that was a big hit too. That
yeah.
I think the way they flipped that Bee Gees song is pretty brilliant. And it's not I'm not the biggest Bee Gees fan, but I will definitely play that song in DJ sets pretty often.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, do you want to talk about anything for Bloodshot Records as far as like it's you said it's the 25th anniversary this month.
It's our yeah. So we that compilation I was talking about, which we called Insurgent Chicago Country, that came out in June of 1994. So our 25th anniversary is upon us. So our first event to commemorate it, first of many this year, we are curating the main stage at Old Town School of Folks Square Roots Fest in Lincoln Square coming up on July 20th. It's a street fest, so it's a $5 donation to get in, and on that Saturday, the main stage starting at 4 p.m. is all Bloodshot Records artists. The headliners are Murder by Death, who is an amazing band from. They're from Bloomington, Indiana, but they're now based in Louisville. They've been on the scene for a long time. They have this amazing way of blending punk rock and country music and bar rock and this sort of like gothic folk. They're a band that I was a fan of before I started the label, which is great. And then the other headliner is the Mekons, who are an iconic, impossible to kill punk folk collective that started in Leeds in 1977. We just put out their first studio record in 8 years, Deserted, which is an amazing political folk punk record. So they're playing. And then this band, the Vandaliers, who are one of our newest signings. They're from Dallas, and they are another band blending a lot of things together. It's punk rock, it's Texas country, it's Tejano music. They've basically got the rock and roll 4-person setup plus fiddle and trumpet and piano, and it's
Wow.
incredible. They put on a great live show, and then we're gonna have a kind of a Bloodshot All Stars band, which is mostly members of the Gold Stars, which are an incredible soul, R&B, garage rock backing band from Chicago. They've backed all kinds of people. Notably, they backed soul legend Andre Williams for a long time until his passing this year. So they're going some of the members of that band are going to be sort of a house band, and we're going to have some different Bloodshot singers and players from over the years come up and sing covers, sing some Bloodshot classics, which will be fun. And then they are going to play a tribute to Andre Williams too. So that'll be a really fun day. It's family friendly. Anybody can come. And then we're doing some events out of town in New England and Texas, Nashville, Seattle, kind of some of the cities where we also have some great followings and great fan bases. Yeah. And then otherwise, we already have some cool merch out with the 25th anniversary kind of iconography commemorating the anniversary. That's already up on our site. We got t-shirts and stuff. And then we are working on a compilation that I can't really talk about too much just yet until it's announced, but I can tell you that it's very Chicago centric and pays homage to our hometown. And then we're going to be reissuing some classic Bloodshot records and reissuing them in some kind of fun ways. There's going to be some stuff that's never been on LP before. There's going to be some special packaging. That stuff's all going to be coming up, and people can follow along with that on our social media and on our website. And if people go to our website and sign up for our newsletter, they'll see that, and also things that are happening in their respective towns. So yeah, it'll be an exciting year, and we just put out a couple records by some great newer Bloodshot acts and also some stalwarts, and then we have some great new stuff coming out in the fall. It's not all retrospective. We're also really excited to be putting out music by some great bands and singer-songwriters that are newer on the scene.
Wow. Yeah, that all sounds great, man. Congratulations to Bloodshot Records 25th year.
Thanks. I'm happy to be a part of it. It's all very exciting, and it's not like as a small independent label in this tumultuous industry, it's not like we're already planning for the 30th. We're just like, yeah, I hope we make it that far, and if we do, we'll throw some parties.
Yeah. Well, Mike, I want to thank you again for taking the time and doing this podcast with me. I enjoyed the conversation. I hope you didn't hate it entirely. So
no, it was so much fun, Chris. Thanks for I don't get to do a lot of these things, and so it was a lot of fun to talk to somebody who did their homework, and also it was fun to talk about a lot of different genres because I'm from a lot of different backgrounds and listen to a lot of different types of music. So it's fun to kind of cover all that ground and also learn a little bit about you and what kind of music you're into. I took some notes on things that I need to listen to. It's always good to share some new stuff and get into some different things. So thanks so much for the thoughtful conversation.
Oh, you are very welcome. I'm looking forward to your set, man. You're gonna be first up, so you're gonna be setting the tone there, I think.
I'll get people going. It'll be Sunday morning coming down, kind of. I'll even though it's on a Saturday, I'll maybe have to play that song. But yeah, I'm looking forward to your set as well, and looking forward to meeting you in person next Saturday.
Cool, buddy. Well, you have a good night, and I will see you soon.
All right, thanks so much, Chris. Appreciate it.
Take care. Bye.